So you're thinking about getting a Gretsch Electromatic guitar, but which one do you buy? Do you go with the classic Gretsch hollow body with the Bigsby? Do you go with the solid body Jet? Or do you go with a different model? Well, let's take two of them and put them back to back and see what you think. Hey folks, I'm Jack Fossett. Welcome to this shootout and discussion on Gretsch going solid body versus hollow body in the Electromatic series, and seeing which one would be for you based on kind of a review, based on hearing them back to back, and I'll share some of my thoughts on these two models with you. So let's jump right in. To start off, this is the Gretsch G5220 Electromatic Jet. This is a solid body, but it's chambered, and it's kind of about, roughly I'd say it's about a Les Paul size. It's very, very Les Paul in feel, but not in sound. Now, I've done a full review just of this guitar. Feel free to check that out if you're interested. I would say that this is somewhere halfway between a Les Paul and a Telecaster. That's a very, very, that's a sweeping generalization, but for those of you that know the Gretsch sound, it kind of has that throaty, twangy growl that you would expect more from a Fender, but it has more fullness like you would expect from a Gibson, and then take that and put it almost in like a different realm of guitars, and that's what this is. So this is a great guitar. It has a pretty fat neck for what it is. It's not terribly fat. It's kind of nice in the middle, nice and wide. On the Electromatic series in general, I've found incredible quality. I'm really, really impressed with what Gretsch is doing right now, and it's a major step up from what they were doing before. Around 2016, they revamped their Electromatic line and made them more of a middle ground. Now they have the Streamliners as the lower end. They have the Electromatics as the middle line before you get up into like the Players Editions, and then, kind of the Made in Japan, which are the really high-end ones, which are excellent guitars. But for a long time, it was kind of like Electromatic was a little bit of a lower end, and then there was a gap, and then you got into the higher end. Well, they've kind of smoothed that out, added the Streamliners. The Streamliners are actually great buys too. Don't get me wrong. I'm just kind of talking about, price, demographic of what you're getting. Now, there are a couple of big differences between this one and the G5420, which is the other one in this video. Now, this one First of all, this one is nearly half the cost. This one comes in right now at $450 brand new. That's as of fall 2019, which it is right now. These are $450 new. Now that's a great buy. Let me just say that up front. These are made in China. This is about as good a buy of an electric guitar as I've found on the market. The Electromatic hollow body, the other guitar in this video, that one is $850 right now, and there are other various models and things. At $850, that one's priced, I think, pretty well right. I won't say that it's necessarily an insane buy, but I also don't think it's not worth what they're asking for it. I think that's right about what you would expect. Now, the flip side of that is if it's something that you don't expect to keep, this one you don't get as much for. That one you can kind of fetch. I think the Electromatic solid bodies fetch probably $600 to $750 used, maybe $550 if it's kind of beat up. These are going to be more like $300 to $350 used, maybe $400 if it's in really, really nice condition, you have a case and whatnot. As far as features, they're relatively similar. This one has Broadtron pickups, and again, it's a chambered body. And then this is not your typical Les Paul setup. You have two volumes. You have a volume for each pickup. You have a master tone, and then this is a master volume. And then you have your typical three-way selector switch. You have the barrel, the kind of screw-in barrel strap knobs. It has some nice sort of modern but vintage styled tuners. They're really, really smooth tuners. The action is great. I think this is a really nice guitar. It has kind of the angled stop tail bridge with the Tunematic. Beautiful wood grain on the back with then the sparkle top finish. I mean, just an excellent guitar. So now at this point you're wondering, well, why would you take these two that are such opposite ends of the spectrum and put them up against each other? Well, number one, I think if you're going to talk about solid versus hollow body and which one is for you, it's beneficial to let's go to the extremes. Let's really see how much of a difference there is between these two extremes. The other reason, which is the more practical reason, is these are the Gretsch guitars that I have. So this is what you get. Now, for this solid body Jet, one of the things about this that I think is this is going to be more familiar to a lot of people. So Gretsch are very different. Now, I've played primarily Gibsons and Fenders and some Epiphones most of my guitar playing career. I've also played PRSs and a number of other things, but I've generally been kind of into the classics. I've been into Gibson and Fender. And playing a big Gretsch solid body is a very, very different feel. I absolutely love it, but it's a very different feel, and it's pretty foreign. Feel-wise, it's almost like playing an acoustic guitar with the size of it, it's much bulkier having the Bigsby. I have a couple of Gibsons that have tremolos, but I don't use them because they don't stay in tune and they're stupid. I mean, they look cool, they just functionally, they're terrible. The Bigsby's kind of the sweep of a Bigsby, the big hollow body, kind of thinking about that classic rockabilly and rock and roll sound. It's just a very, very different feel to playing electric guitar. This, even though the sound is very Gretsch, this is much more comfortable. So if you're used to something like a Fender or a Gibson and you're really thinking about getting into Gretsch guitars, this is probably the better bet to start with. And the reason is because not only is it more familiar, but it's also less expensive. And so this is kind of a less committal way to get in and say, okay, well, the Gretsch sound suit my sound. Now, I know a lot of people who, if they're going, well, if I'm going to get a Gretsch, I got to have a Bigsby. That's part of the Gretsch sound. I can totally understand that. They do make other model solid bodies. They make a double cut that has a Bigsby. They make a whole bunch of different guitars in the Gretsch Electromatic line. Again, we're going to focus on these two today, but they make a solid body double cut with a Bigsby. They actually make a hollow body that's a little bigger than this, but more like this size with a center block and a Bigsby. Then they also make a larger double cut hollow body with a center block. All these are in the Electromatic line. All these are different. So there's a couple of other more middle ground ones that you could think about if you really want that Bigsby. But again, the reason for this video is to do the two extremes back to back. These are about as different Electromatic Gretsch guitars as you can get. So this is the G5220 Electromatic Jet. Now this guitar, this is the G5420. This was my first Gretsch electric guitar, and I was really, really glad to jump into it. I've also shot a full demo of this one. Feel free to check that out. This guitar was the guitar that I always had my eye on when it came to Gretsch's, because it seemed like, again, a reasonable introduction to the Gretsch world without getting the super expensive one. Of course, it's more expensive than the G5220, but it still was within a reasonable price range. And especially when they revamped it, they do it now with a pinned bridge, and they took Electromatic off the headstock. They changed the headstock shape. They went to these sort of thumb inlays, which are functional actually. The idea of the thumb inlays is that your finger kind of feels more of the actual smooth fretboard wood. This is more like what I think of when I think Gretsch. Not to say that the Jet isn't a totally classic Gretsch too, because it is. But I think for a lot of people, when somebody says Gretsch guitar, you think more something like this. This is more their flagship style of guitar. This is an excellent guitar, and I'm really glad that I got this, and I'm really glad that I took the plunge. But again, this one was definitely more foreign to me than the Jet was. If I had started with the Jet first, it would be very much like, oh yeah, this is kind of a cool Gretsch sound, and you can do this with this and that with it. But it would, feeling wise, very different. This one is like a dive right in. Again, just sitting here with it, it feels like I'm holding an acoustic guitar. Because of the size, because of the thickness. It also has this huge airy tone that has kind of like this slight touch of jazziness to it, but it also has that Gretsch twang and growl, and this has a really, really rich tone. Now this one has Filtertron pickups instead of Broadtron pickups. The controls and the functions are still the same. You have a volume for each pickup, you have a master tone, and you have a master volume. The tuners on this one are a little bit more vintage styling. They have these open gears on the back and kind of this classic style tuner button. So the tuners are a little bit different. The neck shape is pretty similar. It's a thicker neck, but it's not crazy like holding a baseball bat. It's a beautiful guitar, and again, even though this one costs more, I think it's, I definitely think these are worth what they're asking for. I think priced, these are very, very reasonable. Now, there are a couple of practicality concerns regarding these. Number one, this one's going to feed back an awful lot more. With a Bigsby, it's not going to stay in tune quite as well. Now, there are plenty of tricks that you can do to keep a Bigsby in tune. If you Google it, I'm sure you'll find a whole ton of stuff on, how to string up a guitar properly and how to keep it in tune. But just know, if you're going to kind of lay on the Bigsby, particularly with standard tuners and things, it's probably not going to stay in tune as well. You can upgrade the bridge, you could upgrade the tuners, you could upgrade the nut. Those are all modifications that you could do. But so practicality wise, if you just want a grab and go guitar that's going to give you a familiar feel, that's not going to have, potentially as many tuning issues, that won't have as many feedback issues, the Jet might be a better buy for you. It's less money, it's more straightforward. This one, I think, gives you kind of more of a richness and more of a class. I definitely think the tone of this has more depth to it. I don't think the tone of the Jet is bad. I think the tone of the Jet is really, really good. The Jet has a little bit more of this slightly aggressive snap. Now again, they're different pickups, but also the different body style, different body size. This all makes a difference. This one is just going to give you more of that classic tone. This will still drive, and Gretsch has designed these in a way to, have controllable feedback with it. And the fact that these pickups are not hugely heavy in the bass frequencies, they're not, they certainly don't lack low end, but they're not like regular humbuckers, which have that kind of massive power and things to them. The feedback is controllable, but if you're playing a rock gig in a small club, this is probably not the best guitar for it, whereas the Jet, you could probably get away with that. Now, both of these guitars are unmodified. Both of them are strung with Elixir 10 gauge nano web strings, so I'm trying to present it as close as possible to you so that you can kind of hear the difference. Playing into a Fender Bassman 59 reissue. I'm using a couple of pedals for this. I'm using a one-controlled Prussian Blue reverb to add some air, and for the overdriven tones, I'm using a DCW Tradition, which is a hand-wired Tube Screamer style overdrive pedal. So very straightforward, Tube Screamer into a Fender with a little bit of reverb. So let me know, what do you think? What do you think of Gretsch Electromatic guitars? What do you think of the solid body versus the hollow body? Is there one in the middle that you like best? Do you like one of these best? For my money, and again, I know that one is half the cost, but this is the one more for me. I like this one better than the Jet. I think the Jet is great. I did find that if you're kind of heavy in palm muting, on the Jet you can sort of whack the strings right into the pole pieces if you have the pickups set higher, so you might want to set those pickups a little bit lower to account for that. But I definitely think that these are two excellent guitars that are worth checking out. I'm Jack Fossett. Thanks for tuning in. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Let me know your opinions in the comments, and we'll see you next time.